What if we talked about things that actually work within your planner system that makes you a little bit more productive than what you thought before? Maybe you have had a planner system for a while and you love all of them, but you're not really finding that you're getting closer to achieving your goals on a consistent basis. If that's you, then today's video is definitely made with you in mind. So today we're going to be breaking this down into two separate categories. One are going to be physical things that you can actually add within your planner, and two, it's going to be more related to some of your habits that actually allows you to have a lot more success when it comes to using your planners. So if that sounds good, let's just get started. And if you have never met me before and you find videos like this really helpful and useful, please make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way you get notified every single time that I release a new video. But without further ado, why don't we just talk about the first thing that I think will make a big difference within your planner system. So first we're going to be talking about mindset and your habits and your routines. So the first thing is first, I think that sometimes planners don't necessarily work for us because we're not really including them in our regular routines. So I think having a really strong morning routine and evening routine makes the experience of using your planners a lot more enjoyable because you're already scheduling that time in and you're already including that into something that you're about to do anyway. Whether in the evening you spend time winding down, doing your skincare routine, maybe having a warm cup of tea, it's a perfect time to actually include using your planner or your journal within that time frame because your mind is naturally already kind of winding down and reducing in productivity. This is also the time that you can use your planners to pre-plan for the following day. So having an evening and morning routine is going to be really key when it comes to that. And make sure that it's time specific and it's reoccurring. Those are the two main criteria that has to kind of go into this. Now, the second thing is that your system has to be easy to understand by you. It doesn't really necessarily have to make sense for other people, but it needs to be a system that 100% makes sense to you. It follows your own logic and it's not too complicated. Sometimes I found that when I would create planner systems for myself, the reason why I wouldn't stay consistent with it had a lot more to do with how complicated I made things rather than just the fact that the planner wasn't working for me or I was duplicating information, which I think I mentioned to you guys before. So make it easy to understand. Don't make it too confusing because the more complex you make your system, the harder it is for your brain to kind of stay consistent with it. And also it's a lot harder you're basically reducing decision fatigue. So that's sort of where this will make a big difference. It has to be very personal to your own needs. So don't necessarily feel like you have to copy someone else's system in order for you to enjoy the planners that you set in place, because a lot of it has to kind of make sense for your routine, your lifestyle, and your schedule. And number three is the planner that you actually end up looking forward to. I think that this gets overlooked, or we end up kind of justifying it within the planner community, or we're kind of naming it like, oh, it's an overconsumption issue. I think that when it comes to having the perfect planner, if that ever existed, a lot of it has to do with also how you feel about using that planner. And if you're not feeling excited or inspired, or that it doesn't give you that energy of, I cannot wait to use this. Like everything about this just makes me happy, between the decoration, the cover, the size, the paper quality, whatever the details are of that specific planner that you're using. If it doesn't make you feel a certain way, it doesn't make you feel inspired to constantly use it and reach for it, then that just tells me that that experience that you've had with that planner might not be the right one for you. And it might not be because the layout doesn't work, but because you don't feel, it doesn't create the environment where you're mentally looking forward to using it. So that's definitely something that I don't think gets talked about enough, that you kind of need to pay attention to how certain things make you feel, because intuitively we all kind of know what works for us and what doesn't work for us aesthetic wise. But it's another thing when you're interacting with a product every single day and you're including them into your day-to-day routine. You want to make sure that it's something that you actually feel inspired to use. Now let's talk about what is something that you actually need to have inside your planner. So now we kind of talked about some of the habits and the routines, which I think will actually improve what will allow you to be more productive. Now let's actually talk a little bit about what specifically should actually be inside your planner in order for you to be just as successful. What should be inside your planner? So glad you asked. For each planner, you're gonna hate this, but for each planner is going to be very specific. So, what do you mean by that? Well, it has to do with its purpose. I know you're gonna hate this because, okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, I'm gonna use the Traveler's Notebook, and I'll show you guys a close-up of this. So for the Traveler's Notebook, for me to be a successful and like helpful tool for me to be productive, it needs to have a little booklet, which I have here. So this little booklet will hold anything and everything that I find useful and helpful, or as a quick reminder, which is why I set it up as a commonplace book, okay? It needs to have, if I'm using this as a reminder, so for the time being, keep in mind, like this system is actually transitioning, but I'll just tell you how it should be done for me in order for this to be functional for me to be productive. So I should have a monthly layout here with all the reminders that I will need to know for our bills to be paid, okay? So that to me becomes very essential. Is this going to stay here? No, it will not stay here. Like I said, it's transitioning into a whole other system where it's completely dedicated to just finance and financial planning. But as of right now, until I have that in place, this will serve the purpose, which means that it is not replaced just yet. And then it should have a weekly, which is just the weekly that you guys are familiar with, that has all of my schedules, all of my upcoming events, that kind of has it in like one snapshot. So it should have all three of those elements in here in order for this to become a successful system. Now, if this is playing a role of being an on-the-go planner system that has information about my work, information about my home life, very minimal information about my home life. So this is probably not the system that I'm going to be using to write down. Maybe I might write down like a quick video idea, but I might not do like a full like write out and script in here because it's not the purpose that it serves. I have a whole separate system for that. So I'm just trying to demonstrate the point that inside whatever planner you're using needs to have those elements in there that you will use for the purpose that you set up for it. Let's say I converted my Hobonichi weeks into, I don't know, like a mindfulness or into like a wellness planner, okay? It should have my full schedule in there. It should have enough of a layout in there so that I can write out each of my workouts. Like I should be able to schedule in all my workouts. I should be able to have enough space for me to write any mindfulness thoughts, any exercises, anything and everything. If I'm using this as a hybrid between mental health and then also like a wellness workout routine. I'm not using it for that purpose, but I just wanted to kind of demonstrate a point that inside the planner needs to have some of the things that you will be using, and that includes accessories, by the way, that will make you functional to use it for the purpose that you set it out for. And I think that this is where we kind of run into issues sometimes, because sometimes like one purpose can leach into another planner system, and then again, like you might be either duplicating it or you might expect more out of that one system that it's not able to give you because that's not the purpose that it's supposed to be serving. So hopefully that makes sense. The second thing that it should absolutely have is a specific time. You should always have it in a routine, a specific time when you use it. So if this is an on-the-go system, I should actually have this set up right at even the day before or the morning of when this is going to come with me. And it should have information from the previous week that comes into this week where I can kind of look into it and say, oh, thank goodness I didn't forget that. So it should have all of these elements in there along with, it should be functional for how you're going to be using it essentially. That's sort of my point, that you're obviously, or maybe you are going to be like traveling with like a larger planner setup, and that's kind of what works for you. But if you have like your planners at home, for example, then you have a specific time that you set aside in your schedule where that's the only time that you're really giving yourself to actually check in with this, and you use that consistently. Look at the key words here though, because like the main key word here is consistently, consistency, and a specific time of day that you do that on a regular basis. Some people check in with their planners every single day. I tend to do that. And some people tend to do that like once a week. I personally couldn't pull that off just because my schedule changes and my routine changes so often. And a lot of the times, especially when I'm trying to plan things around my work, a lot of it is really like weather dependent, and also it dependent on like the family schedule. So because of that, because there's all of these shifts and changes that takes place, I kind of need to check in with my planner on a regular basis. Okay, so I wanted to add this quick little disclaimer addition because I don't want you guys to walk away from this video thinking that I didn't actually give you guys at least 2 more tangible or 3 tangible things that you can physically add into your planner that will help you feel more productive, okay? Because I realized as I'm editing the video that I give you 2 more like behavioral or mindset things. So here we go. So you can add things that will help you create systems. So that would be a color coding system. That could be a time blocking system. That could be like extra reminders, something that kind of stands out. So that would be things that you would add, like you would need highlighters. Highlighters are excellent. I like some of the ones where you can either use something like a dot marker. I know some of you kind of talk to me about this, that it dries up quickly. So you end up kind of using an alternative. I like this mainly because of the end. Because the ends are kind of round. So if you find markers like this, personally, I also really like, and I haven't talked to you about this very much, but I also like these, some of these dual-ended markers as well, because on one hand, let me just click this on. So on one hand, you have a brush tip. So on one hand, you have a brush tip. On the other end, you actually have like a little fine tip. So I will show you a close-up in a second. But because of that, this could be like really great to both highlighting things as well as using the fine tip part of this as a color coding system. Also, we talked about dots. You can use dot stickers. So if you don't want to use highlighters and markers and things like that, because it just doesn't kind of pop, I also like using dot stickers. 1,001 different variations of dot stickers. But so I like something like this. This one is from Cloth and Paper, and I'm always on a hunt to use them up. But these are nice and subtle, which is why I like them. But I also really like it sometimes if I want something that is going to kind of make it stand out. Swatelier's stickers are excellent for that. Okay, here's an example of it, okay? So these are like gold and bronze, but they also have like some really fun, they have some really fun bright colors. So when you have something like this, it makes things kind of stand out. Here we go. So having dot stickers like this, if you don't want to use an actual marker, is totally fine. The other thing is decor. Decor will kind of make from one spread to the next something that kind of stands out. I wouldn't go too crazy. So this, you need to kind of use a little bit of nuance when it comes to decoration or decorative stickers and things like that, only because I think that if you're primarily using your planner and your system for an outlet for you to be creative, it could potentially take away the ability for it to be productive. Do you know what I mean? For it to like kind of keep you on track. So you're going to need to know the purpose of this, right? Using a key, we talked about this, the whole purpose of like having these highlighters and things like that, beyond like kind of allowing things to kind of stand out, having a key where you add the categories that make sense to you will make a big difference. And then of course, like you can use things like sticky notes, flags, icons, different trackers, and also rulers. Having a really good ruler will not only allow you to kind of create separation, which will allow you to subsegment your pages so that visually it doesn't overwhelm you. So like the whole idea, at least for me, when I'm looking at a really functional spread, is that it's clean, it's easy to understand, it has elements like the little stickers or icons. If I end up using them, I'm using them for the purpose of like it jumps right out at me. If I'm using these dot stickers, it's because I want that information to stand out from everything else. And same thing with if I'm color coding things, which by the way, like the color coding thing can be so powerful. Mainly, I've noticed it a lot when I'm doing financial planning, where if I'm using just a little dot on like certain expenses, it becomes a lot easier for my brain to kind of subcategorize them together. So then that way I'm not wasting my time on sorting through. So like the whole idea when it comes to productivity or when it comes to keeping things functional, it's so that your brain does not have to spend so much time on sorting through information to understand what you're looking at so that it knows like what is your next step. So hopefully that makes sense. I really wanted to add this in because I didn't want you guys to walk away thinking she didn't actually tell us what to add into the planner. She just talked about mindset. But a lot of the times I think that having a proper system in place where you're clear about its function and what you want it to do for you, and then adding all of these accessories that actually make you more productive can be so helpful, because sometimes we buy the things and then we have like no idea what to do with it. Or at least I'm going to speak for myself. Sometimes I get certain accessories or I receive them in sub boxes and I'm not 100% clear of like its main function, or I understand its main function, but I don't know how to incorporate that into my own routine where it can actually help me instead of clutter me. So hopefully that makes sense. And I think that this has been an ongoing thing for quite some time for a lot of us when we're getting sub boxes and things like that, where you get things and you're like, looks cute, but I don't know how that will actually help me be more productive, right? Like, I don't know how that will actually help me achieve my goals a little bit faster versus just something that I received that looks aesthetic. Your things don't need to be fitting a certain aesthetic for it to be fully functional and to help you stay on track. Whether you're using a specific tracker, whether you're, you can keep a lot of these things very simple and they can be just as effective as buying the aesthetic version of that same thing. So the aesthetic sticky note or the aesthetic, little tracker or like the tracker sticker that you can add into your planner. I don't want you to get caught up so much on the aesthetics. It matters to a certain extent. And then after a while, sometimes you need to kind of check in with yourself of, is this something that, actually going to make me feel more productive? Or is it just something that I'm really drawn to because it fits my style of aesthetics? So hopefully that makes sense. And I'm always going to kind of challenge you guys on kind of check in so that you don't overconsume things that you're going to look back on and you might not end up using anyway. Or you might look back on it that you're like, why did I buy this? Like, this was not even, it didn't make me more productive and it didn't allow me to achieve my goals faster. Because no matter what, like the whole point of all of these systems is so that they help you actually achieve your goals. It's not so that you create your perfect spreads, because you can have the perfect spread, but you're still not getting closer to achieving what you ultimately want. Then these are not the tools that are really helping you. So that's all I wanted to add, but I hope that you enjoyed the rest of the video. And then last but not least, it needs to be accessible. It needs to be accessible for you. And I think that accessibility is, again, it's a really broadly used term because some people really want everything in like one system where like you kind of know like what's in there. For me, it needs to be accessible, which just really means that for when I'm going to be using it, if I'm using it in the morning, it needs to be around here. And it needs to be easy to understand, easy to use. So kind of similar to what I was kind of mentioning in my first point, it needs to be something that not only makes sense for me, but it really, really reduces decision fatigue. I think when it comes to being productive, the worst thing that you can do is to fiddle around with your planner for an extra hour when it's something that you could do in 10 minutes. Does that make sense? So like, yes, you can make it like an elaborate spread and then it becomes more of a mindfulness practice. But I think that when it comes to productivity, I think that a successful system needs to be Easy to understand, very accessible and available to you. You need to have time scheduled when you're checking in with it, and it needs to be easy to understand and easy to set up. Easy to you, where you basically not bogging down your brain with spending more time on trying to figure out, or either duplicating information, or you're not trying to figure out if you have already planned it or if it's relying in like a totally different system. So I've done that before too, where I didn't really give like a specific purpose to some of my notebooks tend to be some of those things for me where I really need to be careful with how I'm using them, just because I tend to duplicate information, or I end up using like 2 different notebooks and I leave them at 2 different places, and I'm using them for the same purpose. So like, in order for that to be a successful system, I need to kind of bring them together and then put them into one central place, like a planner, where I can check in with it on a regular basis, and then that information actually becomes useful to me. So hopefully that makes sense, that it needs to be accessible. That's really what it boils down to. And obviously me enjoying using that product kind of helps quite a bit, because then it just motivates me to continue to use it, and I end up looking forward to using it more. So I've kind of noticed this even with workouts are very similar to this actually. Like, if you're wondering how to kind of stay consistent with like a workout plan and things like that, what I used to do at the very beginning when I was just getting back into a wellness routine, I would basically buy new outfits. And I don't think this is the most economic way. I will admit, I don't think that this was the most economic way of staying consistent, but it definitely helps. I would end up buying a new outfit, and I would think about not necessarily the workout, but I end up thinking about, I get to use that thing. Now you can kind of use this analogy or this theory within planning as well. And again, I'm not encouraging you to overspend, but if you end up having, you know, if you have like your favorite pen, or you have like a new accessory, I don't know, like a washi tape or a new sticker sheet that you just bought, sometimes that helps you to kind of pull yourself a little bit out of that rut, essentially, where you don't feel that drive to use something. And then if you think about, oh my gosh, I get to use that new sticker sheet that I just bought, it will kind of hack your brain into end up looking forward to using the thing, and then hence keeping you more consistent. So hopefully this makes sense, but I would love to hear from you. Now that I have shared some of my tips, I would love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments below so that we can all benefit from your wisdom. What are some of the things that have helped you stay productive within your planner system? What is something that is like your non-negotiable that you have added into your planner system that has made it both consistent and it helped you stay productive? Share it in the comments. And of course, if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not yet had a chance to already. And in the meanwhile, just keep planning, keep journaling, keep doing all the things that makes you happy. And I cannot wait to see you guys in my next one. Bye.